Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Karula sighting. There's Karula, the great queen of Djuma. I'm just going to quickly turn down the game drive radio, which is so loud in my ear that I truly feel like my brain is going to explode. I'm okay now. Now, as Jamie was saying, we saw these two this morning. We also saw Hosanna, but not with them. And Xongile and I found a few baboons earlier, and we think maybe they came in between the slot. Maybe they chased them again and split them up. Hosanna was actually on the same drainage line, but quite a long way down that way, probably about half a mile down to the sort of south, downstream as it were. So I don't know if they came past him on their way up here. I doubt it. I think he would have followed them. I think she will go back and look for the little male very shortly, or at some stage, probably tonight. Now, they did kill something, and she's looking directly towards the kill, and Xongile made a very good point as we got in here. That, of course, is a very rare occurrence that Xongile should make a good point. He is on camera, everybody. Well done, Xongile, for making a good point. And his good point was that she's unhoisted the kill, so she put it into this big jackalberry tree to the right-hand side. That very nice shady tree under which we're sitting now. She put it in there, but she's now moved it down onto a termite mound to the left-hand side. And Xongile's relatively good point was, why on earth would she take it out of a perfectly good tree and leave it there? And I think the answer is that because it's so small, I don't think it's, conveniently easy to hook into any of the boughs of the tree. So if there's a male impala, they often will hook the horns in between the boughs or in a fork, where something that little is often quite difficult to do. And because it's so easy to sort of cat handle, if you like, you like that, Xongile? No, you didn't like that. Cat handle, manhandle. I think it's easier just to eat it on the ground, and it's so small that I think they'll probably finish it fairly soon. It's not impossible that Hosanna is around here somewhere, but I think he'd be eating, actually, if he was. So let's just sit here for a while, and we'll see what happens, and maybe later on we'll go and have a look. I'm just going to quickly call this in on the Game Drive channel. Stations relocated to Karula, and one youngster still to the western side of quarantine. Best approach is to come on the western track that goes west of quarantine, and then you will find tracks going west from there, about 300 meters from the junction with Vuyatela access. Animals are static. Now, of course, that should be enough, but whether or not anyone would have heard me. And there is the queen herself. Now, Brent's father, who is a fine naturalist himself, after we discussed the panting of leopards today, remember, they pant after they eat, and I said it was for two reasons. One, the diaphragm has pushed up against the lungs, and so it's difficult for them to breathe because the stomach is so full. Then I said also, of course, there's a huge amount of oxygen needed to absorb the nutrients, and Brent's father thankfully didn't disagree with anything I said, but he said, and I quote here, one of the reasons, in addition to what you said, is a factor called heat increment. This is the heating effect resulting from digesting meat and the active and therefore energies involved, absorbing of the broken down nutrients, and as you would expect, anything that involves the expending of energy produces extra heat as a byproduct and therefore needs to be lost, and as these predators can't sweat, they need to pant to lose the... Basically, what he said, and he was an animal scientist in his day, of course, now he's a businessman, but that the action of digestion creates metabolic heat, and that heat they have to get rid of. As we know, the cats, just like the dogs, do not have any kind of sweat glands, and so what happens is they must pant in order to get rid of that extra metabolic heat. Isn't that nice information? So you see, it comes from all quarters, the information, and that's courtesy of Mr. K. Leo Smith, father of Mr. BLS. Marvellous. Now, the other thing I wanted to say about this leopard, totally disconnected to the panting, she's obviously got 4 spots there on the left hand, her left, our right, yes, just behind that leaf. And if you don't know what I mean, I will explain this to you a little bit later. Hashtag Safari Live, questions at WildEarthTV. If you've got any questions for us, terms and conditions apply, batteries not included. And if you go to the other side, which she's not showing us now, we've always said that she's got 3 spots there. And I was looking at some photographs of her the other day. And on her right and our left, she's actually got 4 spots. There's a very light one there. And while I doubt she'll ever be known as the 4-4 female, that is what she is. There are the 3. You see 1, 2, 3 just behind the nostril there. And if you look just above and between the first 2, there's a very faint little spot there. I don't know how that or why that's been sort of discounted. In pretty much the same place that the 4th spot is on the other side. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can see 4 spots there just above the whisker line, and those are used to identify a leopard. I mean, obviously we know Karula from 1,000 different ways, from the wow written across the front of her forehead, just to the look of her face, to the colour of her pelage, her coat, with a slightly, dare I say it, saggy skin around her belly. But she's got 100 different ways to identify this wonderful, wonderful leopard who so kindly shares her life with us. Isn't that marvellous? And then little Xongiles, also hot, bothered, digesting food, trying to escape the flies. I think we'll probably sit here for about 20 minutes. Of course, these are 2 of our favourite characters in the whole world, and so even though they are flattened, not doing a great deal, we'll sit with them for a little while. And then we might go off and see if we can find Hosana and see what he's doing. We did struggle to find him again this morning, but we can do a little walk through the drainage line and see if we can't find him. Aaron, that's a really interesting comment from you. You say, looking at Karula and Xongile, it's like looking at Karula and her mini-me. You think that they look very similar. I tend to agree with you, Aaron, but were you to say the same about Hosana, I would say no. I actually think that Xongile is starting to look quite a lot like Shadow, interestingly. She's got that kind of it's quite a severe look to her face. Shadow looks quite severe, and Xongile, although still imminently cute, especially when she's doing things like that, I think she's got that same sort of severity to her face. At least Hosana, on the other hand, is a different color from these 2, and I noticed that this morning. He's much more golden, and that's quite unusual for her lineage. Her lineage is generally fairly honey-colored. Can you see the resemblance with Shadow? There she looks up. Such a fat little belly. So that's very honey-coloured, and I think that the old Hosana is a lot golder than that. And look at those feet. Those feet are almost the same size as her mother's. Now, Jandri and I was trying to work out this morning. We found some tracks of a leopard, and I mean, we were a little bit baffled as to whose they were. And well, I mean, in Jandri's case, that's okay. I, however, expected to know. Unfortunately, I did not. And having looked at her feet now, they just look like a small female's tracks to me. I think they were Xongile's. They were just too little to be Karula's, but you can see that her feet are almost the same size now as her mum's. And I think Hosana's are just slightly larger. Well done, Jandre. That's Jandre playing foot art. Now, Ilana, you're 13 years old and you started watching last week, and it's wonderful to have you with us. And you want to know, when I'm reading leopard spots, am I reading from left to right, or right to left, or their left to right, or our right to left, or how does it work? Now, this is a very, very good question. And what I'm going to do, I used to have a whole collection of little leopard diagrams in here, but unfortunately I do not anymore. We are reading our left to right, so her right to left, okay? So if you're looking at Karula, she's got 3 on her right, our left, so you read it like a book, and 4 on our right, her left. Make sense? So she's 3, 4. Right? Is that right? No, she's 3 on her right and 4 on her left. But we read it from left to right as you would a book. That's the easiest way to remember it. Thank you, Gendre. Gendre is giving me the thumbs up. That's very unusual as well. Some lovely sounds of the summer. The grasshopper going thick, 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 thick. In fact, that's probably a cicada. 1 or 2 chin spot batis. Catherine, you possibly also a new viewer. That's wonderful to have you with us. You say, are there many leopards in this area, and do they live together? There are quite a few leopards in this area. It's one of the highest concentrations of leopards you probably find in Africa, and therefore anywhere in the world. And so, yes, there are lots, but no, they're completely solitary. And the only time you see leopards together, there'd be 2 reasons. One, a male and a female will have decided that they like each other quite a lot, and they'll be mating. And the other reason would be if you happen to find a mother and her cubs like this, and until they go independent, then they will be around with mum. Female probably till she's about 16 months old, maybe a bit shorter, quite often a bit shorter, and the male till he's about 2 years old. Very nice. Look at her. So uncomfortable that she has to just put her foot up there. It's a bit like you after your enormous Sunday lunch, and then you just have to put your feet up on the sofa for a while. Now, Brent-Leo Smith is hailing me on the blower. Let me attempt to get hold of him. For our new viewers, Brent-Leo Smith, of course, another guide here. He's driving around some, well, dare we say, dignitaries from National Geographic who are here to visit us. So I'm just going to tell him where the sighting is. Go ahead. One must be quite firm with him, of course. Brent-Leo Smith, go ahead. Go ahead. He wants to know which way to come, how to come. Brent-Leo Smith, I think your best approach is going to be to come from probably from the western side of the drainage. There's not much space in here, especially for 2 cars. I'm in the drainage line. If you come around to the western side, I think that's going to be your best approach. And there we are. Isn't this wonderful? It's the most peaceful thing to be doing on a Saturday afternoon. It is Saturday, isn't it, Gendre? Right, these leopards aren't going anywhere. Byron, however, has got something that might very shortly, so let's go and find out what it is. Now, there has been very little activity since you left us last. Karula actually just did get up and said hello to Xongile before going back to sleep just behind where we are now. So we'll give you a view of her just shortly. But they haven't gone to eat, and I think they've done a huge amount of eating in the last few days. I don't think that Karula was hungry when she killed that impala, especially given how we saw Hosana. If you weren't with us on drive this morning, we saw little Hosana, and he looked very satiated indeed. He didn't look in the slightest bit hungry, so I think they've probably come off a kill towards this area. And I think that's why they're not looking particularly enthusiastic about the meal their mother has prepared for them. And I say them, but Hosana is not here right now. We'll try and find him a little bit later on. Can you see Karula, Gendre? There she is. Gendre is not very happy because it's not the best picture in the world. He gets very upset if the picture isn't very nice, you see. He's an artiste. Now, I think what we're going to do, everyone, I have said this a little bit earlier, but I think we'll sit here for another 10 minutes, then we'll head down and see if we can't find Hosana. And then we'll come back here a little bit later. I'm kind of missing this name here. I think it's Padsley. Is it Padsley in Fourways, Johannesburg? Puz. P-A-S-Lee. Pasley. That's an interesting name. You say, will her territory stay the same her whole life, or might she move? It does stay pretty much the same, Pasley. It will expand and contract on either side, north, south, east, or west, slightly, dependent on pressure from other leopards. So she'll have a core area which will remain pretty much unchanged. And then let's say I'd say about a fifth, if you take a radius of a circle, and about a fifth on the outside will expand and contract depending on pressure from leopards that are living around her territory. But she would never sort of move completely. I'm sure leopards have done it. Just about every kind of phenomena you can think of has happened in biology. But I think you'll probably find that it's extremely rare for a leopard to move completely from her territory. That's another safari vehicle there, being driven by the inimitable Brent Leo Smythe. Now, for those of you also who haven't been watching of late, Xongile has made 2 kills so far, on her own, completely. Both of them, as far as we know, squirrels. I mean, she may well have made many others while we haven't been watching. There we go, scrub hair on Arathusa, as Gendre says. Thank you, Gendre, for that. You could say it slightly less cerbically next time, that would be great. He says he doesn't know what a cervic means. I'll educate him shortly. And that's interesting because, of course, she will most likely go independent before him. And so she's starting to kind of sort herself out. But interestingly, he was on his own today. He didn't look uncomfortable at all. And, yeah, they're both, I guess, starting to assert some form of independence at this stage. It's very early for a male to be on his own, but not unusual for him to be on his own for a day or two. Christine and Kathy, nice question from you about whether or not leopards can have green eyes or multicolored eyes, or what kind of eyes they have. Sometimes they maintain blue, but normally it's the kind of color that she's actually got quite brown eyes. Hers are unusually brown, but her brothers and mothers are the most common leopard color. It's a kind of greeny. It's a greeny color. I mean, how would you describe it, John? There's a kind of pale lime green, I suppose. It's actually it's almost like a honeyed yellow green, if you like. It's not very striking. Hers are strikingly brown, and the Mvula, for example, one of the males who we used to see quite frequently, his eyes are pretty much blue. And interestingly, while I talk about Mvula, of course, his territory has shifted, and it's shifted almost. I wouldn't say completely out of where it was before, but it's certainly contracted hugely, probably because of pressure. This is a famous trait of the Queen, everybody. She likes to stick her tongue out. It's not very royal, is it, Gendre? Stick your tongue out like that. Long whiskers. Nobody's entirely sure what whiskers are for. Here comes the leopard. Come, Gendre. The little one's coming towards us. She likes the look of Gendre, you see. He's got quite a lot of flesh on his legs, and I think maybe she's looking at him thinking, I wonder if that tastes like chicken. I am, of course, talking absolute rubbish, both on the... I don't think Gendre's legs would taste like chicken at all, but she's also not looking at him for any other reason than she's a little bit bored, she's a little bit uncomfortable because her stomach's so full and she's hot, and so they're just a bit like us tossing and turning when we're in bed and hot and uncomfortable. That's what she's doing. But she's now so close that I actually can't see her. I can only see her in the monitor that I'm looking at. Now, Tucker, you're just 4 years old. Hello, boy. I hope you're having a good time on safari with us today. You want to know if the mum is cross that her little boy, Hosanna, has not bothered to stay with her, that he's run away. Tucker, he hasn't run away. He's just down, he's actually not too far from here. He's just a little bit lost, and he's getting older now. I know that he seems very young, but he's basically like a human being who's, say 13 years old. So he's just starting to be okay. It's like he's going shopping on his own, or maybe riding his bicycle to school on his own. So no, his mum's not cross with him at all. She'll be happy to see him again, I'm sure, but she's not cross with him. All right, let's head back across to Jamie. She's on foot. I don't know what she's got. Let's go and find out.
So we decided to give up on the lions who were resting, so we decided to come and have a look at the resting leopards. It's so great to see Karula and one of her cubs again. I haven't seen them for a while, so it's nice to get to and hopefully spend some time, and maybe with it cooling down we might get a bit of activity and they might move around. So let's see. It could be really, really nice, and lovely cool drainage line that they have found themselves in. I can't see where the kill is at the moment. I think it's behind us somewhere, the remains of the kill. And let's see, they're quite hot. I'm just resting in the drainage line. This is still the little female, Xongile. I always struggle with the pronunciation and some names that you don't hear very often. I can't remember. Brian, is it Xongile? Yeah. And Hosanna, I don't know where he is. He's wandering off around somewhere. The young male, as young males do, I suppose. It's always just so incredible to sit and watch leopards like this. It is relaxing again. I mean, it just shows you that generally the cat behavior when it is hot, they do prefer resting and lying down in drainage lines like this. I'm not sure where they were lying when James saw them, if they were out in the open or if they were deeper in. But still just resting in this area. There's no need to move. I suppose they've got food nearby, and it's cooler here than anywhere else. Kathy, so you wanted to know if these leopard cubs will move or become independent on their own, or does the mother have to push them away? So, Kathy, usually what happens is once they get, and the average is about a year and a half, so 18 months, once these little cubs get to about that age, the female actually forces them out. She'll start hissing and growling at them, and then they quickly get the idea that they have to move off and find their own little territory. But what happens is the females, so Karula would most likely give up a portion of her territory for the young female, and the young male, he will have to move off and find, he'll be nomadic for a while, but he'll have to go and find his own territory where there's no big dominant male that will push him out. His father might, and again we think his father is Tingana, he might tolerate the young male being around for a while until he gets to a certain age, and then possibly chase him out and cause him to go and find his own territory. I have seen young male leopards 2, 3 years old, 4 years old, with their father still in the same area, and occasionally the two of them meeting. So it can happen, but generally speaking, they do get pushed out and they have to go and find their own territory. But the females, they'll give up a portion of their territory for the young females. And then she can extend it in the opposite direction away from where her mother's territory is. Sure, I always feel like these cars bake us a little bit. I think we gently slow cook in here. That panting again, just to try and stay cool. And I wonder if that young male will meet up with these two later. A good possibility, a good chance. Bobby, you want to know, how does the female know when to stop taking care of the cubs? So I think it's just instinct, Bobby. I think the females, now again, you know, I think she knows, she realizes when they get to a certain age that they're now old enough and probably mature enough to go on their own, and she perhaps has taught them how to hunt well enough, and they need to fend for themselves. But I've seen quite a range in that age where they get pushed out. I've seen young cubs as young as a year old get pushed out and fend for themselves and survive. And I've seen young male cubs up to 2 years old, just, you know, about 2 years old, just over 2 years, staying with the female, hanging around, and when she makes a kill, that big young male, because at that age they're already quite big, will come through and try and steal the kill from her, but they'll follow the mother and stay with her. So I've seen quite a range, but generally it's instinct. The female knows these cubs are probably successful enough or able to be successful on their own. She's taught them how to hunt, and we saw it the other day. Brent was very fortunate to see the young cubs chasing a squirrel, and that's all a learning process for them, learning how to hunt, learning how to stalk, learning to use their agility and their speed to catch something. And when they get a little bit older, the female might even possibly take them into an area where she could leave them to try and hunt for themselves, and they'll start working their way up. Maybe smaller antelope. These impala lambs at the moment are actually a good way for her to teach the young cubs. Once they get to that stage, she'll probably then decide that it's enough, they need to move off on their own, and she can continue doing what leopards do, patrolling her territory and potentially mate again. I do think this female might have the chance to mate again in another litter, judging by her age. Because how old she's now? 10, I think, almost 11 years old. She's about 10 years old, I think, if I remember correctly. I stand to correction. I think she was born in 2006. Sorry, she was born in 2004, so 12 years old. 12 years old, that's it. So yeah, so I do think she's got a perhaps another litter left that she might be able to raise. She's been such a successful leopard. I wouldn't be surprised if she didn't have another litter. No, I wouldn't be surprised if she did have another litter, rather. How cute is that little female? Very, very beautiful. was very kind of James to let us come back into this area while he was in search for something else. So we get to spend a little time with the leopards. I haven't actually sat with leopards for a while, so it's nice to get back, view some leopards and spend some time with them and see what they get up to. I have been very, very fortunate that in my guiding career I've worked in areas where leopard viewing is incredible, and I've seen a lot of leopard behavior and seen a lot of leopards, from cubs to adults to mating leopards, leopards fighting, just about everything, which has been great because I've learned so much just from viewing them rather than actually reading up in a book, because some of the stuff that I've seen, some of the behavior I've seen, I've never read. So it is interesting to see how wild animals adapt and change their behavior from what experts think they know. I think it does change out here daily, which is important. We need to remember that, because they're wild animals. There's never a guarantee. You can never predict what they're going to do. I mean, by the amount of, well, the years I've spent viewing leopard, I've got an idea of what I think they might do, but it's never a guarantee. Never ever. James, interesting question about the males. You want to know if the males, or if I know of a male that's stayed nomadic and has been unable to establish a territory for itself. I'm just trying to think now, James. Sure, not that I can think of. All the young male leopards that I remember all managed to set up a small territory of sorts. And I think all that would happen is if there was a lot of dominant male leopards around, then those territories that they set up might just be a lot smaller. But I do think they do end up staying in an area at some point. But then once they get old and they get pushed out, then they become nomadic again. If there's too much competition, then yes, they will indeed just move through areas and try to stay away from dominant males. They won't scent mark as much or at all, and then try to keep a low profile, just hunt and feed and survive, and that's it, and just try to stay out of the way of the dominant male. So it can happen. It can happen. Oh, there we go. Karula is up. She might just change positions. Let's see what she does. Just relieving herself there of Impala. And it's interesting how big cats will get up. They'll walk away from where they're lying down, and then they'll drop their dung or their scat. And often when they get up after resting for long periods of time, and then now we'll see, she could potentially just change her position and go lie down somewhere else again. It is still warm. Look, little cub is doing the same now. Let's see if she walks back this way. There we go. And I'm curious as to what she's going to do. She may head back towards a kill, although I'm not sure where it is. No. There we go. Just change positions, lie down in some cool sand again. Oh, look, here comes little Xongile, just in front of the vehicle, not far from us. So I swapped with James basically. I'm here with the leopards and he has gone to the Nkuhumas. Let's see what they're up to. So Karula's just moved off, but Xongile is still right in front of us, so I'm not going to move at all. Karula's just moved down the drainage line, up the drainage line. I wonder if the little one will follow her mother. I'm sure curiosity is going to get the better of her and she'll potentially stand up and follow. Oh, hang on, there we go, just as I say that. See, she's watching her mother intently. I can't see where the female is. She's moved a little bit, or basically behind some trees now, so I can't see her at all. Oh, look at those beautiful eyes. Isn't that wonderful? I can hear Karula. I can hear some branches moving. I wonder if there isn't a tree that you potentially try to take that kill up, but unfortunately just can't move at the moment because the little cub is in front of us, which is okay. It's not the end of the world. We'll just be patient and see. This little one is not moving at all. I'm going to try to see if I can't see where. But it is a bit dark. No, I really can't see anything from here at all. And if I don't just quickly check with it. No, there's some trees in front of me. So there's absolutely no way of. Sorry, I keep sticking my cap in the way. So she's moved a little bit now, but it's still, because she's still young, I don't want to really move too much closer to them and disturb the little one. She's still a little bit nervous of the vehicle, so I think if we were moving without the mother close by. So I'm not going to bother them. Hang on, let's just see quickly where she goes. If she moves up the drainage line. All right, so she's moving up. I'm going to try reposition. Let's quickly head back to James. I think the Nkuhumas are out in the open on the road.